Hey, what's up, people? Welcome to my review and in depth analysis for X Men 2 X Men United. If I had to title this review, I would call it Where is Cyclops? I am not a big fan of this film. I will say this is a good movie, but I feel like it's not a good X Men movie, and I have numerous issues with this film. As an X Men fan, I found this film to be very maddening. I think the ending is terrible, particularly the death of Jean Grey was just awful, and I will explain why. So basically, this is the beginning of the X Men franchise's woes as far as having this franchise go down the wrong path as far as creative decision making goes. Killing Jean Grey was a terrible idea. Why? Because we just got introduced to these characters in the previous film. So the previous film, X-Men 1, was a decent movie, in my opinion, aside from the fact that I just hate Rogue. I hate the Fox X-Men movies version of Rogue. That's not Rogue to me. That's an abomination. But other than that, the film was decent. It retained the spirit of the X-Men comics, which is what I'm all about. Now, the second film, Jean Grey dies in the last act, and it's like the filmmakers want to elicit this emotional feeling like of loss, especially from the character Wolverine. And it doesn't work. It's contrived. It's forced. The relationships are forced. Because Wolverine did not know Jean Grey. And us as the audience, we did not know the X-Men. So they tried to make this whole like, oh no, it's so terrible. Jean's gone. And Wolverine is like, no, crying and stuff. And it's like, dude, you don't know her. You've known her for like a week. Think about X-Men 1. X-Men 1 took probably place over a span of days. And then in between X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, Wolverine was out looking for Stryker's base. And then he comes back at the beginning of X-Men 1, meets Jean in the lobby. Jean's going to try to find Nightcrawler. Wolverine gets into the whole save the X-Men students plot. And then they reunite in the camping sequence. Jean rejects Wolverine, erases his memory of the forced kiss that they had, and then that's it. That's it. That was their entire relationship. That's it. And they want to make it seem like, oh my God, Jean's gone. Isn't it so sad? And every time I watch this movie, I'm like, it was such an awful, terrible idea to kill off Jean Grey in the second film. They should have done this in the fourth or fifth film. Have us get to know the characters. And most importantly, develop the relationships between the characters. But they didn't do that. Not only did they not develop the relationship between Jean and Wolverine, but they introduced these characters such as Cyclops and this abomination called Rogue in the previous movie. And then they get no character development, especially Cyclops. And throughout the duration of this film, I'm asking myself, where is Cyclops? Where is Cyclops? Like, how can you introduce this character and then have him get taken out off screen or taken out by Lady Deathstrike and then make his whereabouts unknown? Like, while I watch this movie, I'm like, where is Cyclops? What happened to Cyclops? What is he going through? How does he feel about it? Cyclops gets screwed so hard in this movie that as an X-Men fan, it's disrespectful to the essence. And I don't care if you're not the biggest Cyclops fan. Some people think, oh, he's kind of the Boy Scout. He's kind of an asshole. Like, if you're an X-Men fan, you care about all the characters and how they're treated. And the way Cyclops was treated, this was the beginning of the end for me until they rebooted the series with the younger versions. Because this was bad. I remember seeing this in the theater and being totally bummed that Cyclops got screwed, that he was off screen doing God knows what. And I know you're people out there, well, he was captured by William Stryker. Well, can I see that? And don't even tell me that that wasn't even something that the filmmakers contemplated, because there is literally a deleted scene of Cyclops in captivity. So Cyclops, I wanted to see Cyclops in captivity. Maybe Cyclops being interrogated by Stryker. Can I see Cyclops trying to resist the mind control of Stryker? Can I see how he feels? Can I see him? No. Instead, we get this whole nonsense with these ex-teenagers, which is cringeworthy as hell. And I can't believe people consider this one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. I strongly disagree with that sentiment. Now, when it comes to the abomination called Rogue, okay, whatever. You introduce her in the previous film. She's not the Rogue that we all know and love. She's not the Southern Belle. She doesn't have Miss Marvel's powers. She's just basically this hybrid of Kitty Pryde, Jubilee, and Rogue. And the only thing rogue about her is that she can absorb people's powers. But her personality is like Kitty Pryde. And okay, you introduce her in the first film. Maybe in the second film, they will develop her character more. Maybe she will eventually get Miss Marvel's powers. And if there's a copyright issue, whatever, she can get her superhuman powers another way. Point being, develop the character. What did they do with her? Absolutely nothing. Her whole thing in this movie is, I want to kiss a boy. And then what is her whole deal in the third act of the film? The climax of her character arc in this film is holding hands with Bobby on the Blackbird. It has to be the lamest thing ever. And the only thing that infuriates me more is what they did to her in X-Men 3. And I will save that for X-Men 3. But my point is, everybody praises this film like it's a masterpiece. And look, if I was in an X-Men film and I saw this movie, it's a good science fiction movie. But as an X-Men fan, I found it to be infuriating. And the biggest sin this movie commits is in killing off Jean Grey way too early. We just got introduced to the X-Men and they kill her off. Wolverine does not know Jean. And not only that, there's too much focus on Wolverine in this film at the expense of characters like Cyclops and the abomination called Rogue. I mean, they even introduce other characters. They introduce Colossus. He's just there to rescue the ex-teenagers or the students, and then that's it. And then he disappears. That's the biggest problem with these movies. They have characters that have no character development. They're just there to stand here and use your powers. Thanks. And that's it. And it wasn't until I saw the Avengers and what the MCU did with their characters that it was fully realized that you can develop an ensemble of characters, treat each character with an equal amount of respect, give them all a significant role to play in the film. Because prior to seeing the MCU and the Avenger films and stuff like that, there was always this kind of like sentiment that, oh, well, they can't develop all of them and blah, blah, blah. And now we all know that that's just a bunch of bullshit. That's just a bunch of excuses. So thank God for the MCU being able to illustrate to us as the audience that it is fully possible to develop dozens of characters, right? It can be done. And this whole sentiment that, oh, there's just too many characters, they can't develop them all. Look, that's not true. And look no further than all this ridiculous amount of time spent on these ex-teenagers. Bobby and Rogue and Pyro, which is so lame. It's like I'm watching a made for Disney Channel movie every time they're on. All that time spent on that cringeworthy stuff could have been focused on characters like Cyclops, characters like Storm, develop Rogue's character, etc., right? And look, I'm also, another thing that I'm not a fan of in this film is sometimes the depiction of Wolverine really gets on my nerves in this film. Like, it goes back and forth, I feel, between being comic book accurate and trying to make him into like this handsome hunk that's trying to seduce Jean. And it's like, that's not Wolverine to me. Wolverine is like a feral, animalistic dude who at first Jean was kind of scared of. Like in the comic book, she was like, back off. But here it's like, oh, hi, Logan. Like walking down the stairs, seeing Logan return from his search for Stryker's base. Like, oh, hi, Logan. And then he looks up at her like, oh, hi, Jean. Oh, what a handsome hunk. Like, and it's just like, we need a babysitter. It's like, what the fuck is this? Like, I'm trying so hard not to like convey too much anger, but it really just gets on my nerves. It gets under my skin because, point being, this isn't what the spirit of the comic books is to me. You know, and this film never feels like an X-Men movie because the team is never together in an official capacity. And that's my biggest problem with the X-Men trilogy. The only film in the entire X-Men trilogy where the X-Men felt together as a team in an official capacity was the last act of X-Men 1. Because here they don't feel together in an official capacity. Professor X is gone. Cyclops is missing, the leader of the X-Men. People, the team, whatever, they don't know what the hell's going on. Is Wolverine even officially an X-Men? Like that was never stated in the previous film and in this film. It just seems like he's kind of in between, like, I'm going to go try to find out my background history. I'll come back. And then I'll let you know. But then he comes back and everything is all messed up. Xavier's missing. And it's like he never joins the team in an official capacity is my point. And then X-Men 3, we already know how that is. Professor X dies. Cyclops dies. Jean dies. I mean, what the fuck is this? It's awful. These movies feel like Wolverine guest starring the X-Men. Like the X-Men are just in the background, man. It's all about Wolverine. And the first film at least made us think that maybe Rogue would be a main character, but she gets relegated to a bunch of nonsense and uselessness also. Like I said, though, this is a good science fiction movie, but a bad X-Men movie. Like, don't get me wrong. There are some great scenes in this movie, and I'm going to talk about them. And there are some great performances in this movie, and I will talk about them. But as far as being an X-Men fan and me appreciating this film, I don't appreciate this film at all. Now, this film is extremely well made. Like, Bryan Singer's direction is impeccable. I'm not going to say it's not. Like, as far as his directing, his shot compositions, all that. Beautiful. He's a great director. But him getting involved in the writing process and the story, it's like Bryan Singer, it feels like he's resisting making an X-Men movie and trying to make something in his own image or trying to make his own thing. And this feels like Bryan Singer's X-Men. It feels like Bryan Singer Men with a little bit of X-Men elements poured into it. That's what this movie feels like. And you know, I really just don't appreciate it as an X-Men fan. Now, as a science fiction fan, there are some things to appreciate. I really like the idea of reverse engineering Cerebro. so that it can attack mutants. So William Stryker's plot in this film was very interesting to me. And the performances from actors like Brian Cox, who played William Stryker, Patrick Stewart, who plays Professor X, Ian McKellen, who plays Magneto. These guys are outstanding. They are what make the movie watchable to me. Like, the X-Men fan in me hates this movie, but the science fiction fan and the film lover, there are things to appreciate. I appreciate certain things in this film, and some of the performances are outstanding. I'm not going to take that away. Especially Nightcrawler. Like, I could see how a huge Nightcrawler fan could love this movie. Nightcrawler was done impeccably. Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, he nailed the role. He did an outstanding job. And this opening where Nightcrawler attempts to assassinate the president is iconic, and I could see why, and it was superbly directed. But me, being an X-Men fan, I cannot compromise. I can't reconcile with the mistreatment of Cyclops and Rogue and the lackluster depiction of Storm. In other words, I want all my X-Men to be treated well. I can't just say, oh, well, Nightcrawler was done well, so I enjoy this movie. I just can't. I can't ignore the poor treatment for the other characters. But like I said, if you love Nightcrawler, yeah, you'll love this movie. Like, if Nightcrawler is your biggest and only superhero that you love, then yeah, this is a great movie. They did an excellent job in depicting his character. But again, where is Cyclops? I'm going to keep coming to this. Cyclops, the leader of the X-Men, is absent for 90% of this film. Cyclops is nothing but the concerned boyfriend. Throughout that's all he is in these movies. Like you introduce his character in the first film, and it was decent. His depiction was decent. I felt like it was comic book accurate, but I wanted more. I wanted to see him as a leader. He did a good job in the last act in the previous film, but we needed more of that. I wanted to see them show Cyclops as a true leader, because that's how he is in the comic books. And look, if the writers of this movie and Bryan Singer don't like Cyclops, they don't like his character, well, guess what? You shouldn't be making a fucking X-Men movie then. And that's my point. And if you're an audience member and you're like, well, I don't really like Cyclops, well then, you know what? If you don't like Cyclops, in my opinion, then you are not really the biggest X-Men fan. That's like me being like, oh, I love the Avengers, but I can't stand Iron Man. Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but maybe somebody like you shouldn't be dictating the creative decisions in a film like this. Like, you are entitled to your opinion. You could show up to the Avengers to see Thor, Hulk, and Captain America, but I feel like if you are part of the filmmaking team and you feel that way, then you shouldn't be writing the movie. We need people that actually love X-Men and all the team members making these movies. And that's the biggest problem with these Fox X-Men movies. Like, you got people in the creative process who want to change things. I don't like this. I don't like that. And to me, that is very off-putting, to say the least. Same goes with these awful depictions of Iceman and Pyro and Rogue. Like, Rogue is just, like, I can write poetry and song about how much I hate the Fox version of Rogue, the Fox versions of Rogue. Like, you see her here, she doesn't have a Southern accent. She's not the Southern Belle. She doesn't have the Miss Marvel powers. All she cares about is kissing Bobby, having a boyfriend. And to me, that is the antithesis of Rogue's character. Rogue endured trauma in her childhood when her boyfriend tried to kiss her and went into a coma. Now, when any other male tries to pursue her, she freaks the fuck out. Like, she will punch you in your fucking face before allowing you to kiss her. Why? Because she does not want you to go into a coma. She does not want to live that trauma again. Not only that, but she does not want your thoughts and feelings stuck in her head for years. That to me is Rogue. That's why the romance between Rogue and Gambit in the comics was something so powerful to me, because here you have this guy. He can literally have any woman in the world. He's a good-looking Cajun, right? He's the good-looking Cajun. He's suave. He's got, he's like James Bond, debonair, whatever you want to call it. He's smooth. But he chooses Rogue. He loves Rogue because of her personality, even though he can never touch her. So I thought that was brilliant. That was a brilliant love story. You got this guy, Gambit, who can literally have any woman in the world practically, and he chooses the woman that he cannot touch because he loves her. He loves her personality. He loves her mind. He loves her soul. And Rogue, she's like, he tries to come on her, and Rogue is like, fuck off, like, leave me alone. Don't you know that I could put you in a coma? And he just continues to want her. And maybe not physically, but he is there for her. But my point is that there's resistance from Rogue. Here in the movie, she's like, oh no, I don't want to hurt you. And he's like, you won't hurt me. Iceman, you won't hurt me. And then they kiss. Oh, wow. And it's like, man, they destroyed the character of Rogue so bad in this movie. And this whole idea that Iceman and Rogue are together is preposterous. It's so fucking stupid. Like, why wasn't Gambit in this movie? Like, that there was some limitations in the X-Men 1, like with Beast not being in the film because of budget restraints, that maybe he was going to be a CGI character, maybe the makeup, too much budget, whatever. But Gambit, why couldn't Gambit be in the movie? Really, why couldn't Gambit be in the movie? Don't tell me that why couldn't Gambit be in this movies? It makes no sense. An iconic character like Gambit was wasted. And wasted on nothing. They put him in X-Men Origins and it was bullshit. And then they put him in a comedy. Deadpool and Wolverine. Totally wasted. But this whole thing of Bobby and Iceman being a couple, oh my God, it fucking makes me sick. And Bobby, rather than being the sarcastic badass that he is in the comic books, he's just basically Justin Bieber. Like, that's what he is. He's Justin Bieber when he was a young guy. He's a cute teeny bopper. It fucking sucks. Same thing with Pyro. Pyro, rather than being Australian, he's just another teenage punk. And it really sucks. And another thing about these movies that I hate how these movies destroy the nationality of the characters. Like, X-Men are supposed to be a diverse group of characters, but instead they destroy the nationality of each character. Colossus is not Russian. Storm is not African. It's funny because Halle Berry, she was trying her hardest to have an African accent kind of in the first film, but then she completely drops it in the second film, which I thought was just, it was just ridiculous. Total dumb decision and jarring. And now we have a Pyro who's not Australian. It's like, and now we have a Rogue who doesn't have her southern accent. total disrespect to the source material, and yet people want to say this is the best comic book movie ever made. I totally disagree with that. And, you know, here we have Lady Deathstrike. So Lady Deathstrike, I thought her addition and contributions to this movie, I thought they were good. Even though she's not a Reaver. So Lady Deathstrike, she's supposed to be a cyborg, one of the Reavers. But here they made her into a mutant, which is fine. I thought her depiction was okay. But again, she's just there to use her powers. She has no lines of dialogue, or maybe 1 or 2 lines. She says yes or some shit, and that's it. She's just there to fight. No character development, nothing. And just like in the previous movie, Sabretooth doesn't know Wolverine. Lady Deathstrike doesn't know Wolverine. In the comic books, they have this extensive history, but okay, I get it. You can't fit the backstory to all these characters into a 2-hour film. But man, what we do get is instead we get Teeny Bopper Corner with Iceman, Rogue, and Pyro. And I will continue to reiterate this throughout this entire review. Instead of giving me that bullshit, I wish you gave me scenes with Cyclops. Where is Cyclops? What happened to Cyclops? Now, another character who is just nothing like their comic book counterpart was Storm. Here they give Halle Berry more material, and it's likely because she won the Academy Award for Best Actress in Monsters Ball. And, you know, that's all well and fine. Like, I like the idea of Storm getting more character development, but not at the expense of Cyclops and other characters who were introduced in the previous film. But in regards to Storm's depiction, this is nothing like the character of Storm. What the hell is this? Like this is an abomination. Like, especially since I'm like reading some of these comics like right now about Storm, and here Storm is angry. Nothing like the character who has compassion for all life. I mean, she literally says that she has no pity. Like, there's this exchange of dialogue between Storm and Nightcrawler, and you know, Nightcrawler, he's like the compassionate one, the forgiving one, because of his deep religious convictions with the Catholic faith. And she's like inferring that she has no pity, that she's all bitter, and she says how anger can help you survive. And then Nightcrawler's like, so can faith. And I'm watching this and I'm like, who the fuck is this? Like, Storm is a deeply compassionate character. She was so deeply affected when she killed her first villain. Like, she was so resistant to just killing in general and being mean-spirited in general in the comic books, that when she actually had to take a life, it affected her deeply. But here I'm like hearing this character that's supposed to be Storm, and she's all bitter and inferring that, you know, we shouldn't have pity for the people who transgress upon us and things. And I'm like, what the fuck? You could totally tell that the people who wrote this thing have never read a fucking X-Men comic book in their entire life. And it's sad. It really is sad. And for her to be like, anger can help you survive. So can faith. You know, I don't know what they've done with the Storm character recently, but to me, she was never like that. Storm was always a compassionate character. Always. And I don't know, I really have misgivings about how the way she's depicted here. Now, when Xavier frees everybody in the museum, I thought that was an awesome scene. I really enjoyed that. A great illustration of the power of Professor X. That was great. And I will again say that Brian Cox as William Stryker was great. He was a great actor. Brian Cox is just always a marvel to watch. Brilliant actor. William Stryker is a villain that was taken from the trade paperback novels God Loves, Man Kills. They made some changes here where, so in God Loves Man Kills, William Stryker, he's kind of like a fanatical preacher. He's a religious fundamentalist that absolutely hates mutants. He views mutants as literally as demons. And none of those sentiments translated into this film. Instead, they make him in charge of Weapon X, which I thought was really, really weird. Like, as much as I love Brian Cox's depiction of William Stryker, the choice of making William Stryker the villain for the sequel to X-Men was always strange to me, especially considering the rogues gallery of the X-Men series. I mean, anybody and their mama would have much preferred Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse, Omega Red, etc., etc. I mean, how many villains are there? Juggernaut. There's hundreds. And William Stryker would literally have been like my least pick. I probably would have never picked William Stryker, but for some reason, the filmmakers decided to pick William Stryker. And I thought it was laughable that we never got another iconic X-Men villain until X-Men First Class, right? So you get X-Men 1, Magneto, makes sense. X-Men 2, William Stryker, makes absolutely no sense. X-Men 3, Magneto again, kind of boring. X-Men Origins, William Stryker again. What the fuck? Then finally, X-Men First Class, we get the Hellfire Club. Okay. You know, I mean, it's just like, these people over there at Fox that made this, Laura Donner, who is literally the wife of Richard Donner, who made the masterpiece Superman 1. So Laura Donner was the big producer to these X-Men Fox films. That lady has no fucking idea what the hell she was doing, man. Like, she is probably Kathleen Kennedy's lost twin sister, man. Like, she had no idea what the hell she was doing, man. But, you know, enough of that tangent. Coming back to some positive things, I really like some scenes in this film. Like, for instance, Ian McKellen's depiction of Magneto, he is great. Like, that scene where he pulls out the iron out of that security guard's blood, that was so badass. Too much iron in your blood. Like, that was badass. Scenes like that. So you see, scenes like that, scenes like the Nightcrawler opening, make me want to love this film. Like, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people out there get rubbed the wrong way because I don't love your movie. You think this is a great movie and you get upset that I don't like what you like and you want to thumbs down me and you want to unsubscribe from me. Fine. But don't think that I don't try to like this movie. I've seen this movie dozens and dozens of times trying to enjoy it, and I just can't. And that's why I'm making this review, because I'm done. I can't enjoy this movie anymore for all the reasons listed. But I will admit there are some powerful and there are some great scenes. And I also love Rebecca Romijn as Mystique. Like, her version of Mystique is so badass, and she was great in this film, especially in the last act. She was kicking ass, and I love the way she just slides into the facility, William Stryker, and starts controlling the base, and she just gives the middle finger to all the security guards and that are trying to come after her. She was badass, man. I mean, I will say this: the action in this movie was a huge improvement over X-Men 1. And that was one of the things that was undeniable upon seeing this film for the first time back when this movie came out. It was undeniable. Like, I came out the theater like, wow, that was way more action-packed than the first film. Like, and initially I thought it was better. But then I started to think about the characters and how Cyclops got screwed and things like that. And I was like, you know, this movie may have more action, but as an X-Men fan, I dislike this movie a lot more than the first film. I absolutely love the scene when Xavier visits Magneto. Whenever you got Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen on the screen together, it sparks fly, man. It's pure magic. Like, that was great. Like, when they go into the history with Stryker's son and the history with Wolverine, and you realize that there's a tie between the two, and we find out that Magneto told Stryker everything about Xavier's school. And then Ian McKellen is like, the war has begun. And then that is juxtaposition with the infiltration of the school by William Stryker's men. And then we see Wolverine cut loose. Like, I love all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. I love it. I love it so much. I just wish the other aspects of this film that I absolutely hate didn't exist. I wish we got some Cyclops. I wish Rogue became the Southern Belle, became Rogue as we know it. But the parts that I dislike are just too hard to ignore. And yes, we see Colossus, we see Siren, Banshee's daughter, but you know, they just put these characters in there just so they could use their powers. Like, the audience could sit there and say, oh, that's Siren, Banshee's daughter. And look, it's not. It's just, they just say, oh, like, what the filmmakers just pull out. They probably got a list of characters and their abilities, and they say, oh, let's put this person in there. And they don't regard or consider the backstory to any of these characters whatsoever. At all. Another thing is, we see Hank on TV, and now he's not in the Beast form. And don't sit there and try to tell me, oh, it's because of the potion that he takes that we see in the newer X-Men films, like First Class. That's complete bullshit. Don't sit here and tell me that when they made this film, they had it all planned out. They didn't. And don't sit here and tell me that when X-Men 3 came out, that it wasn't a continuity error. It was. It was a continuity error. It wasn't that, oh, he always had this potion the whole time and he decided that he wanted to be blue in all the scenes in X-Men 3. No, it wasn't. Because when he went to shake, I forgot that mutant's name. The one that can basically reverse the powers of the mutants. When he went to shake that little kid's hand and his hand turned human, he reacted like it was like something that was not an everyday occurrence to him. My point is that Hank on TV not being Beast sucks. And that him popping up as Beast in the blue furry form in X-Men 3 was a continuity error. And it wasn't planned out. So you can try to perform all the mental gymnastics that you want based off the newer movies, but that's all retcon, man. They did not have it planned out. Now, my favorite scene, my absolute favorite scene, and even though I'm not a big fan of this movie, but this scene sticks with me because of the performances in general. I mean, like, this was some great acting, and I could totally understand how somebody can look at a scene like this and think that this is one of the best comic book movies ever, because this performance was just so powerful. And it's the scene where Stryker and Xavier finally meet face to face. Xavier is basically confined to the wheelchair. He has that mind inhibitor on his brain. And then Stryker and Xavier discussed the backstory here through expositional dialogue. And I loved it. I loved it when basically William Stryker is bitter towards Xavier. And Xavier's like, you wanted me to cure your son, but mutation is not a disease. And then Brian Cox is like, you're lying. And then he talks about how his son was the great illusionist and how his mom, Stryker's wife, basically killed herself by putting a power drill to her brain in an attempt to bore the images out that his son was inflicting upon her. And I'm like, holy shit, man. Talk about a compelling backstory. And then Stryker brings his son out, and he basically experimented on his own son and turned him into a mind control device. And Xavier is like, this is your son, you know? And he's just disgusted by what Stryker did to his own child. And then Stryker's like, my son is dead, just like the rest of you. Holy shit. That scene was so powerful. In fact, as much as I hate, as an X-Men fan, this movie, I gotta say, like, this movie can't be easily dismissed as a film lover because of scenes like this. Like, the X-Men fan in me wants me to give this movie an F or a D, but the filmmaker in me, the film lover in me, I can't refuse that. I mean, I can't give into that. I can't give into my bias. I'm like, no. Because of scenes like this. This was so superbly acted, so superbly directed, and so superbly written, this scene, that it is an iconic scene to me that transcends the comic book movie genre. Like, so all you people out there that don't like me because I don't like what you like as far as comic book movies, I will concede right here and now that this scene is so great that I cannot easily dismiss X-Men 2 as a film lover. This scene is powerful. I think about this scene. When I think about great scenes in movies in general and great acting, I think about this scene. And also, this is the sequence where Xavier realizes that William Stryker staged the assassination attempt upon the president. And then I love how Brian Cox is like, and you didn't even have to read my mind. Like, man, great scene, man. Like, this scene is as good as anything with Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. It was that great to me. Now, unfortunately, this scene was great, but then there's other scenes in this film that are just a travesty and just outright cringeworthy and ridiculous to me. And one of those sequences was when we get to Iceman Bobby's family home, and you have this whole coming out the closet crap, which was so fucking lame. It was just so cringeworthy. Now, please do not misinterpret this as me not liking the concept of Bobby, quote unquote, coming out the closet to his parents, because I love X-Men. What I don't like is how the scene went down. So, in the comic books, in the animated series, they would take an opportunity like this to really show the trauma, the traumatic impact that is inflicted upon young people when their parents don't accept them. That's what I want from a scene like this. Instead, I get this whole like, oh, he comes out the closet and they're like, oh, Bobby, we still love you, but have you tried not being a mutant? And it's like, that's it? Look, man, my mind flashes back to the animated series when Rogue basically, quote unquote, came out of the closet to her father. And just the way her father was like, my own daughter, a filthy mutant. You're not my daughter anymore. Get out of here. And just how she's like, no, daddy, and things like that. I mean, if a cartoon is able to convey such an impactful and emotionally in-depth situation like that, which entails trauma among young people who are rejected by their parents, why can't a live action film? Like, I would expect a live action film to be able to tackle this subject matter with more credibility and merit than a cartoon or even a comic book, because the comic books are like that too. But instead, the live action came out with, it just came across like a fart in the wind. Like, that's it? Like, Dad, Mom, I'm a mutant. Oh, okay. Well, we accept you, Bobby. Yeah, we still love you. But have you tried not being a mutant? Ha ha ha. That's supposed to be funny when the mom says that. And then the whole like, oh, this is all my fault. Oh well, no, actually, it's the dad's fault because males carry the mutant gene. Ha ha ha! A sexist joke, everybody. Isn't it funny? Like, it's so fucking pathetic. This whole sequence is lame as fuck, man, and it's irritating, and I absolutely hate it because a situation like this, you could have tackled this and had such a potent message, such a powerful message, and you really could have done something that could have resonated with the audience, like somebody being rejected because of, let's say, their sexuality coming out to their parents, or somebody being rejected because maybe their family grew up Muslim and now they don't want to be a Muslim. They want to renounce their religion and then they get rejected. Think about honor killings that happen with extremist families. Maybe a daughter wants to go and marry somebody outside of the family religion or outside of the family ethnicity, and the father's furious and he wants to kill the daughter. Things like that happen, man. I'm talking about real world situations that could have been a metaphor here as far as being a mutant and coming out to your parents. Instead, we get this pathetic scene. And I just absolutely hate it. And then Bobby's brother basically swats his own brother by calling the basically fabricating some lie about the mutants being restraining them from leaving the house. And then and then Rogue. The police show up. They want to cause all this alarm. They shoot Logan in the head, and then Pyro goes apeshit and decides to basically let loose on the police with his powers using fire. And then Rogue, it's clear as day that the writers don't know anything about Rogue. They don't know anything about her. It's a complete abomination. So Rogue, she can control her powers like it's nothing. So Rogue being able to control her powers, that didn't happen maybe until decades and decades later. Like, she struggled and endured significant amount of hardship in trying to control the powers when she would absorb other mutants' abilities. And here she's like, oh, I'm just going to hold on to Pyro and stop the flame. No problem, man. Oh, there you go. And no repercussions, no absorbing of his memories or his emotions whatsoever. If this was the comics, she would have resisted doing this. And then maybe Bobby or Wolverine would have convinced her to do it because it was the only way to save the lives of the police and de-escalate the situation. Then she would have absorbed his powers, and then she would have been the one having all of this deep-rooted hatred in her and fear of these police officers, of being treated unfairly. And she would have had Pyro's feelings and thoughts in her mind. And maybe she would have lost control and started like letting loose on the cops and setting fire to the police cars and things like that. And then Iceman would have had to reel her in. That's what would have happened in the comics. That's what would have happened if the writers of this story gave a shit about X-Men. But they don't. They don't know anything about X-Men. Least of all Rogue. And I absolutely hate this scene because it's like, oh, she has no problem. What's her problem? She wants to kiss a boy. That's it. In the comic books, Rogue's biggest problem is that she can't control her fucking powers. And that she absorbs the memories and emotions of those she touches. Getting close to another person, that's secondary. But here, that's all there is. Oh, I wish I could kiss my boyfriend. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing. Now, after this, we at least get some great action again. I absolutely love seeing the Blackbird and Storm use let loose with those twisters, those hurricanes. And that was a great action sequence when Rogue got sucked out into the outside of the plane, and then she's helpless because that's all Rogue knows how to do in these movies. But then Nightcrawler comes along and basically rescues her. All that stuff was great. However, it's totally deflated in regards to how this action sequence ends, because it's so stupid. So Magneto just so happens to be standing in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere, and coincidentally is able to see the Blackbird and be able to rescue it from crashing. Like, how did he know to be in the middle of that field? How did he know that the X-Men were going to be there? How did he know? Like, the Blackbird is a jet, essentially, and it's flying at hundreds and hundreds of miles per minute, hour, whatever, however it works. And he just knows to be there. Him and Mystique, they just know to be there. And they're able to save the day. I mean, it's so stupid. How is he there? You know how he's there? Because the script said he was there. That's it. And that has always bothered me every single time I've seen that sequence. It's like, how did he know to be there? Why is he there? He's just standing there. How convenient. And then we have another dumb scene with this camping crap. And it's like, can't we get some love for Cyclops instead of this dumb camping shit and all this focus on Wolverine and him trying to seduce Jean and all this stuff, and like Mystique going into Wolverine's tent and trying to make out with him? What is this? What is that? Like, what was that for? Like, that whole sequence was pointless. Like what? Like, I could have used a scene with Cyclops. Like, what's going on with Cyclops? Where is Cyclops? What is going on with Cyclops? But instead we get more Wolverine. The only useful thing as far as plot that came out of this whole camping bullshit was Jean reading Nightcrawler's mind and finding out that Stryker is behind everything and locating Stryker's base. That's it. And we could have done that really quick. We didn't need all this bullshit. This movie has so much bullshit. All the stuff with the ex-teenagers, Bobby, Rogue, and Pyro, bullshit. This camping sequence, bullshit. You could have had me invested with some character development for Cyclops or other important characters. Now, once we get into the infiltration of Stryker's base, the movie really kicks into high gear. Mystique is absolutely badass in this last act of the movie when they infiltrate Stryker's base. I already said that. She is amazing. Cyclops ultimately is responsible for why shit hits the fan and everything becomes a disaster, because he breaks the dam. He's brainwashed by or controlled by Stryker, and he can't recognize Jean, or he can't recognize her, but he can't bring himself to stop attacking her. And she has to use her telekinetic or telepathic powers to deflect his optic blast, but collateral damage causes the dam to break, which will ultimately cause her death. So it's funny because Cyclops kind of is responsible for her dying. I mean, not solely responsible, because Stryker's the one that brainwashed him or what have you, but still. Man, Cyclops is treated so badly in these movies. It's pathetic. It's disgusting. It really is. I wish we got to see Cyclops in his captured state, resisting the mind control, trying to be a leader, but instead he's just pathetic. He's just absolutely pathetic. Another thing Another huge problem, and I can't believe this escaped the cutting room floor in the editing room, is this massive continuity error with Nightcrawler attempting to save the captive ex-children or students. So they're like underground, I don't know, in some kind of like manhole, and Storm and all them are trying to tell the students who are basically underneath this manhole or whatever. They're being captive underground, and she's basically telling them, or Storm or somebody's telling the students to give it a minute, that Nightcrawler's going to come down and rescue them. And then when the students respond to Storm or whoever's up there talking to them, you can already see Nightcrawler standing in the background before he teleports underground to them to rescue them. And I can't believe that nobody thought that the audience wouldn't fucking notice that. Like, couldn't you have used computer or CGI or Adobe After Effects or something to digitally remove Nightcrawler from there? Because you could see him standing there, and it's like, oh, hold on a second, Nightcrawler's on his way down. And then the students are like, okay, and he's already standing there. And then you hear poof, and then Nightcrawler's supposed to have teleported there, but he was already there. This is one of the worst continuity errors I've ever seen ever in a movie. And I can't believe that the filmmakers thought that the audience would be stupid enough not to notice that. I mean, it is bad. They could have at least like tried to darken the background, add some artificial shadow to cover him up, but you could see him clear as day. That was pretty terrible, in my opinion. Now, in regards to Wolverine versus Lady Deathstrike, that was a great action sequence. That was a great battle. Loved every minute of it. Loved it. Absolutely great fight choreography. Great. I have nothing but good things to say about that. Now, while things are basically ramping up over here as far as the suspense, because the breaking of the dam is going to flood everything. And then you have Magneto, who decides to reverse engineer Stryker's reverse engineering of Cerebro. So now, instead of Cerebro targeting all the mutants, Magneto reverse engineers it to target all of humanity, which was pretty impressive. That was amazing. Love that little twist. And before that, you see how Cerebro's targeting all the mutants, and the only thing that comes out of Rogue and Bobby even being in this fucking movie is them holding hands. So they're on the Blackbird and they're like, oh, and then you see them holding hands, and then we get a close-up of them holding their hands, and we're supposed to be like, oh my God, that's so touching. That's so touching. But me, I'm saying that's so fucking lame. I do one thing as far as Magneto. Magneto's badass in this movie. Not gonna lie. Magneto, when he pulls all the grenades out of Stryker's men, he pulls all the pins out of their grenades, and then they all just explode. That was so badass. And, it was great to see Storm and Nightcrawler working together. I absolutely love that. Love seeing them working together as far as being able to take down Stryker's son, the great illusionist, from basically misleading Xavier into using Cerebro in a hazardous way. So that was great. Absolutely love that. Love seeing Storm use her powers to stop Stryker's son. Love seeing Nightcrawler and Storm together, basically trying to teach her about faith. I mean, it's not heavy, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say it's deep. It's so above the surface, so it's even, you can even say it's kind of juvenile, but at least it's there, and I appreciate it. And then we have Rogue freaking out over flying the jet, which I thought was so pathetic. So basically, after our heroes, after Wolverine and the other X-Men are able to stop Magneto's Cerebro reverse engineering to attack all humanity, and everybody's all together, all the students, and now that Stryker has basically been dealt with by Wolverine and Magneto, since Magneto tied him up, you have Rogue, who basically flies the Blackbird. Since they don't know where the Blackbird is, it disappeared. And then Rogue flies the Blackbird and she's all freaking out and she's like, and it's like, what the fuck is this? What is this? Can't Rogue ever be depicted in these movies as somebody that's capable and has some sort of agency? She has no agency. She has none. She's just always helpless. Every little thing she does. It's like, damn, man. I hate seeing Rogue like this. It's an abomination. I just can't for the life of me figure out how people consider this to be a good X-Men movie. So we all know what happens. The dam broke. Everybody's about to die because of the flood. And then Jean gets out. She decides to save the day. And then we're all supposed to be sad. But I'm not, because I just got introduced to this character in the previous movie. Wolverine doesn't know Jean. Wolverine isn't an X-Men officially. We just got to know these people, and now it's supposed to be some sad, tragic thing, and it's really not. And then, so Jean dies, and then Cyclops, I mean, man, the acting here is so shoddy. I mean, he's just like, please, Jean, don't do this. And I'm like, what the fuck? My homie Cyclops is depicted as a little bitch in this movie, man. I mean, there's no other words that I can describe it. He comes across like a pathetic wimp when he says, Jean, please don't do this. I mean, it was such a bad acting. That was such a terrible performance. I mean, it's like I'm in acting class at community college, and some neophyte got up and tried to try to depict his best portrayal of losing the one he loved. I mean, and you know what? I won't even blame the actor for that. And I did say that Bryan Singer's directing was great, but here, this scene was bad. I mean, oh my God. As an X-Men fan, I hate this movie, man. My good friend Cyclops went out in such a pathetic manner. The way he's depicted in this film is pathetic. And it makes me sad. It really makes me sad. And then my last criticism of this film is Wolverine's hair at the end of this movie is just absolutely ridiculous. This may be a nitpick to you, but I mean, just look at it. I mean, and this isn't just me. The actor Hugh Jackman has even come out and said something about it. I mean, and I even think in the director's commentary for this film, even Bryan Singer makes some remark about it, because it's just so ridiculous. His hair and all the mousse or whatever. And it's because he was making Van Helsing and he had to come back for a reshoot, but he couldn't cut his hair. I don't know, man. As an X-Men fan, I really hate this movie, but me saying that this film is terrible, that would be a bias. And I am going to give this film a C, because there are some outstanding performances here. And if I didn't know anything about X-Men, anything whatsoever, I would think that this would be a great movie. But since I do, I'm going to just balance the scales and give it a C. Thank you guys for listening to this review and in-depth analysis for X-Men 2, X-Men United. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. Take care.